Let me ask you this. Would you like to be seen as more charismatic? Would you like to know that your message is cutting through? Now, I'm going to assume that you were thinking yes for both of those questions. And I've got a cake here to help me explain. But first, I want to share with you a very quick story. I was working recently with a client who was struggling with being able to speak to a room of people. Now, for the purposes of the story, I need to change this person's name, so we're going to call this person Bruce. But when Bruce was speaking to a room of people, he felt like he really struggled to connect. He felt like he was being scrutinized by the people that he was in the room with. So a little bit more context around Bruce. So what had happened was the company that Bruce worked for had given him a promotion. But as part of this promotion, it meant that he had to be a bit more front-facing within the company. And Bruce had suddenly found himself standing up in front of rooms of people, presenting information, delivering data, and running meetings. And as he was doing this, he found himself worrying about being judged. He found himself worrying about risking damaging his credibility and his reputation, which was a thing that had got him promoted in the first place. So instead of enjoying this new role that Bruce had found himself in, instead he was laying awake late at night with really negative and overwhelming thoughts consuming his mind. The way that he described it to me was that it felt like an internal anger, some sort of frustration, and it was making him lose his concentration at work. Not only that, he started getting really snappy with the people that were around him, but also his wife and his kids. So this had become more than just being uncomfortable speaking to a room of people. This one fear, this one worry, this one challenge was changing who Bruce was being as a person, both at work, but then also at home as well. And Bruce knew that he needed to do something about it. So what we did was, first of all, we worked on Bruce's confidence, and I'm not going to cover that in this video. I've got a whole bunch of other videos on the topic of confidence. But after we did that, we then worked on ways for Bruce to be more charismatic so that he could connect and win people over a lot faster. And this is where my cake comes into play. You see, being a confident and charismatic communicator is a bit like a cake. You need to have the right ingredients. And there are some ingredients that are a little bit tastier than others. So one thing I will say is if you are still here watching this video, it's either because of some of the communication ingredients have worked on you, or maybe you are somebody that has a really weird cake fetish. And that is actually a thing. And whatever you do, don't go typing sploshing into Google. But I'm going to assume it's the former. And I'm going to share with you 3 of the techniques that I have used in this video. So first up, how did I start this video? I used a question. In fact, I used 2 questions. Now, even though you didn't answer out loud, or maybe you did, you lunatic, but you would have answered inside your head. And these were the questions that I asked you. Let me ask you this. Would you like to be seen as more charismatic? Would you like to know that your message is cutting through? You see, charismatic people, they ask rhetorical questions, and they do this to engage the people that they're speaking to. And as you can see from me doing it on camera, you don't need to be face to face to make these rhetorical questions work. It can be done through the video as well. Now, the second thing that I did was I used a story. I told you the story of Bruce. Now, obviously not his real name, but it is a real story. But this creates an emotional connection to the content that you're hearing. It makes you unknowingly search inside yourself for experiences that make you resonate with what you're hearing, which then creates a connection. Now, as a bit of a side note here, these when you go inside and you look for these similar stories, they don't need to be the exact same experiences. It just needs to be something that's similar, something that helps you relate. And this happens all without you being aware. And then finally, the third thing was I used a metaphor. I explained it all like being a cake, which helps you conceptualize the ideas that I'm sharing with you. It gives you something to visualize, and it really helps you understand by simplifying everything down. So there you have it, 3 things. There was ask rhetorical questions, there was tell stories, and use metaphors. Now at this point in time though, you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, what about Bruce? What about Bruce? Well, let me tell you this. Bruce is feeling much better about himself nowadays. He's quite happy, stood up in front of a room full of people. However, Bruce did weirdly develop an obsession for cake.